right, my name is Tricia Crabtree. Most of you pretty much know who I am. My husband and I have been working together with the deaf since 1990. And we've done that in Oklahoma City, Columbus, Ohio, and here in Knoxville for the last 5 years. So I do have my national certification as an interpreter, a CICT, through the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. So, it's nice to have a few little letters after your name, but just FYI, just to kind of give you a little bit of my background. So I'll try to get through this quickly because there's a lot of material that I'd like to cover. And I feel like I'm a little limited because I'm so used to talking with my hands and I have to hold the mic for our recording. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. So there are going to be points where possibly if I need to use my hands for something, Bianca's volunteered to go ahead and be my holder of the mic for our session today. So I know we've got lots of people in different stages of learning sign language. How many of you know no sign language at all besides the alphabet? Anybody like that in here? Okay, how many would you say you just got a basic understanding? We got a couple of missionaries to deaf here. They're going to pretend that they just know just the basics. They know quite a bit. And then how many of you are actually interpreting, maybe in your church or working in the deaf somewhere? Okay. And the rest of you know this is not the Spanish session, right? Okay. All right, good. If you got your hand out, please do me a favor. Don't do what everybody does and read through the whole thing first before we get through. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of following along as we go, I would appreciate that. So at the beginning, I was trying to think of a title for this, The Face of American Sign Language. Some people were saying, they're not greatly familiar with sign language. But I'm not necessarily focusing on signs during this session, but about the face and the importance of it when you are using sign language or when you are interpreting, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But probably one of the most hardest questions to answer, someone will come up and say, what's the sign for whatever, okay? And I hate that question, but I mean, it's always, but I do it myself. Last night, the sign for surfboard would have come in really handy. So I was just out there on those waves, even though I've never been on a surfboard, and I don't know what the sign for that is. So sometimes you have to get a little bit creative on the signs that you use. So I had an instance where we had a business forum here at the college, and business leaders from the community come in. And there were deaf here, and it was in reference to education in the state of Tennessee. And so right after it was over, I'm getting ready to leave. Deaf person comes up to me and says they want to speak with the mayor. Okay, I don't know this deaf person. I don't know what they want to ask. And so I'm in this situation of going up to the mayor and saying this person would like to speak with you, who is deaf, and I'll be interpreting for them. Well, they used a sign that is like this. That's fine, okay. Typically, that's the sign for normal, all right? But in this particular situation, he was speaking about education. All right, now these are the options that I have when using that sign, all right? It's the sign for nation. It's the sign for nature. It's the sign for natural. It's the sign for of course. It's the sign for naturally. It could be naturalized. It could be naturalization, normalized, normalization, nationalized, or nationalization of education. I don't know this deaf person. I have not met them. I have no clue which word they're wanting for me to use with the mayor. All right, so there are instances where what's the sign for is just not going to work, all right, because that one sign could be any of those words. And so a lot of times in those situations, when you do find out what the word is, you'll tend to mouth the word, or hopefully the deaf person will mouth the word for you to give you an indication or a clue what word they're wanting to use in that instance. All right, so another interesting thing about the language, it can be complex. Misunderstandings happen all the time. It's just the nature of basically any language that you're learning. I had an instance of interpreting, and this particular person was speaking to a hearing relative. They couldn't see that individual. I just happened to be interpreting for them. And this person was telling their hearing relative that this sign here, J turning into a W, is the sign for Jehovah's Witness. And so he was talking about getting a call from the Jehovah's Witnesses. And they wanted him to do such and such and such and such. And we're going along through this conversation about the Jehovah's Witnesses. And there was just something in the back of my mind that said, something is not right with this interpretation. And just wasn't making sense. And there came a point in the interpreting where I had to ask and do a clarification. And then when I was silent, the hearing person speaks up and says, "Hon, are you talking about our brother J.W.?" Well, apparently we are. Okay, so I'm laughing. I mean, it was just so completely wrong. They are the same sign, Jehovah's Witness and your brother J.W. But I didn't know that at the moment. They didn't give me any indication or clue. And so I kind of laugh, and a deaf person wants to know why I was laughing. And when I use that sign, JW, he goes, "Oh, you mean those people come, house, bother, knock, 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 that?" I go, "Yeah, no, brother, JW. Like, okay, we've got that clear now. All right, so let's rewind and go back and change a little bit. Another instance is between hearing and deaf culture. And I'm going to kind of run through this quickly because, we've got a bit of material to cover here. This was just recent. There was some type of a board meeting, and the deaf person was on that board and was not going to be able to make it to the meeting. The sentence that said was, "I am stuck with my son this weekend and can't go to the meeting." Okay, this was the email. In response to that email, got several negative responses to him about, "That's terrible that you would say that about your son. I mean, that's important for you to be with son. He's more important, the time that you spend with him and than coming to this meeting." Well, what the deaf person meant was, in hearing terms, stuck is has a negative connotation. Well, in sign language, stuck just means I'm in a situation, I'm unable to be there because I have a conflict. So it didn't have that negative connotation that it would in the hearing. And so there was a complete misunderstanding because the differences in the two meanings of what the deaf person was saying and what hearing people understand as the meaning of the word. If, I'm stuck doing the dishes, or I'm stuck with this or whatever. But he was just meaning, I have a conflict, just this one sign, stuck. I have a conflict. I can't be there. And he didn't have this negative meaning or derogatory thing towards his son. Okay, so those things happen when you have two cultures that are conflicting or intermixing with each other. And there's other meanings of that word stuck. Sometimes it can also mean like an unplanned pregnancy that happened. It was just a nice way of saying it. All right, so it has different connotations and different meanings, a different language. So the importance in sign language is context. When you say, "What's the sign for?" Well, first off, I'll say, what are we talking about and what does it mean? It doesn't matter what the word is, the meaning and the context is what we need to know. And that's a very important thing in sign language. You can learn the sign language all you want from flipping through sign language books, which is great. I learned that way. It was all the wrong way, and I had to undo a lot of mistakes. But the importance is to know the meaning and the context of what you're talking about. And then in the instance of normal, natural, of course, nature, mouthing the word will give an indication of which word we're referring to. So I have a story on the second point, who can God use? I'll tell you a story about BJ and the monotone eyebrows. All right? My husband and I have worked with college students for a long time that are wanting to learn sign language or work with the deaf. And there was a young girl named Jessica who was in our classes wanting to learn sign language. She'd grown up in Papua New Guinea. Her parents were missionaries there. Sweet girl, great, wonderful. She got into the classes, got involved, doing a great job. She was dating this young man named BJ. Now, BJ was as serious as a heart attack. I mean, he had gotten saved later on. He was on fire of the Lord. I mean, no funny business. He is going for God. Very serious guy. He come into my class, and he just had zero expression. Zero. And I looked at him at the beginning of the semester, and I said, BJ, I said, my only goal, my one goal for this semester, by the end of this semester, is to see your eyebrows move. Just a little. That's my goal. All right? And that became our big joke about his eyebrows moving. All right? So I'll tell you a little bit later about BJ and what happened to him. But talking about the people that God uses, he uses people with a servant's heart who don't care about who gets the glory or the credit. Because when you work with the deaf, you're not getting the glory and there's not a lot of credit. All right? I know my husband, when he went to college with someone, and he mentioned that he was going to be working with the deaf. And this young man told my husband, he said, I would work with the deaf, but there's not enough glory in it. He was right. He's right. And that person is no longer in the ministry today based on that kind of a comment. Because when you do this, sure, you might be up on a platform in front of people, but you're working with just a separate set of people. And there are things that you deal with the culture. There are constant misunderstandings. There are constant clashes between the hearing culture and deaf culture. And you're in the middle, and you're trying to keep them together. And, you know, you don't want the deaf person to look ridiculous to the hearing person based on a misunderstanding in culture, which happens constantly. And so we're in the middle trying to do this cultural mediation between two culture groups and trying to keep everybody happy, which just isn't possible. So there are always going to be those misunderstandings. But if you're going to work with the deaf, you're not going to see thousands of people saved. You're not going to see ministries of the deaf with 200, 400, whatever. You're working with a smaller population of people as opposed to hearing population. So naturally, numbers-wise, it is going to be a smaller group you're working with. You'll have that pressure of, you know, we've got to see souls saved, but it's not always going to happen overnight. It takes time for them to learn and to understand. So the next thing is God uses those who are willing to be involved with the deaf in their community. The most important thing is not that we say, hey, you come to my church. You come to my church. You go to their basketball games. You go to their school events. You go to their deaf activities in the community. It is not enough to sit in the church pew and say, come here. Come here. It's not enough to sit there on Sunday morning and expect them to walk over to you and shake your hand. You got to be right up there, coming up to them, talking to them. Hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Just being just friendly with them, being involved in their community. You can't just stay within the church walls and be effective with the deaf. You've got to be out there. That's another type of thing that you've got to do. Very important. God uses those who are never complacent in their abilities. There's some people learn sign language, that's all I need to know. But in this, good enough is not good enough. People ask me, how long did it take you to learn sign language? And I'm like, I'm still learning. It's a constantly evolving language. And you think of technology. When someone comes up with all this stuff, they have to have signs for them too. Okay, so it's constantly changing. I mean, this used to be the sign for phone. Okay, it's not that now. Brother Sloan, yeah, he did back in the day. He used that sign. So, all right. And number 3, a face is worth 1,000 signs. A woman named Irene Duke kind of came up with that little quote there. But it's saying that ASL uses non-manual markers such as facial expressions, head tilting, shoulder raising, mouthing, and similar signals that are added to hand signals to create meaning. Okay, so in other words, if a deaf person, you ask them, have you done such and such? This is how they're going to sign. They're going to go, if they say not yet, they're going to go, they're going to do this strange thing with their tongue that's going to be down the bottom of their teeth with the sign for not yet. So there are certain things that just go with a sign that's just developed over the years in the language of the deaf. So I've taken the word face and kind of picked out some features to discuss regarding sign language. And the first of these is going to be, for letter F, facial features. All right, the eyes, the eyebrows, lips, nose, tongue. So facial expressions in ASL serve a grammatical purpose. There's a reason for them. You know, you can't stand there without your eyebrows moving, or they're not going to know if you're asking a question or making a statement, all of those things. And so they serve a purpose. So if I look at somebody and I have my eyebrows raised, and a deaf person is looking at you and they're going like this and they got the eyebrows raised, they're not surprised. They're looking at you expecting a yes-no response from you, right? If they look at you and they have their eyebrows down, typically this is going to be a who, what, when, where, why situation. Maybe they might sign, your mom, who? Okay, my eyebrows are going to be down. If my eyebrows don't move, I got those monotone eyebrows like BJ did, it's going to be a little bit hard to know if you're saying a yes, no, a who, what, where, when, why. So your eyebrows are very, very important. Okay, so that each of those things serve a grammatical purpose.
So I need to stop pumping my eyebrows?
Well, at least not so much. You're going to need them. They're going to be able to, they're going to have to see them, all right? Exactly. Yeah, everything about your face is the tone. You know, we have our raised voices or whatever, or quiet or this, to show the emotion of something. It's our face. It's all of these things that's going to do this. So I'll have to quickly move on. The sign for very is unnecessary. I mean, there is a sign for very in English. It's like this, very, like if something is very big. All right, but if something is very big, I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to puff those cheeks out. I mean, I'm just going to do all this stuff with my face and show this isn't a little thing. It's massive. It's big. Or I might add a wow. It's okay. So I don't need very because my face, my facial expressions have shown how big it is. If something is very small, it's going to be like maybe you have a little bug that's like, I'm going to pucker in my lips. I'm going to shrink down my body and my face. It's going to be really, really small, all right? But squint my eyes, real small. So I don't need the word very. My face shows it, all right? So it's all in how you show it. So the word yes, there is a sign for yes. There's the yes, or there's yes, all right? Those two ways you can do it. Or you can go, okay, nod your head up and down, all right? So there's three. But let's say these different types of yes. So somebody says yes. First they're denying something and then they're admitting it. Okay, if I'm just using this sign, this is not enough just for yes. So if I'm denying something I've been accused of, then I'll just go, yes. All right, my face, it's not enough just to sign yes. Okay, my face is going to show my emotion involved in it. All right, or if it's yes, an answer, no problem. Yes. Yes. Okay. What about hesitant? You kind of give me a little feedback here. If somebody's saying yes, but they're a little, okay, will you go dump my 10,000 bags of trash for me at the dump? So you'll do it, but you're a little hesitant. So how do you, okay, come on, happy people, let's move our eyebrows. Okay, well, how are you going to look? Here's the sign for yes. Everybody nod your little hands up and down. Everybody try it. Let's practice a yes. Okay, how are you going to do it hesitantly? Yes. Okay, that's another way to do it. All right. Okay, did they do a good job at the piano recital? Yeah, sorta. Okay, that's another way we do yes. All right, ecstatic. Did you get engaged the other day? Yes, look, it's right here, it's right here. Okay, so yes, they're just all excited. Okay, shy. Will you go to the banquet with me on Friday night? Yes. Okay, that's a shy yes. All right, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. They won't say yes, so they're asking somebody, what do you think your parents will say, such and such. So they won't say yes. All right, this is the way it's like they won't say yes. So I'm shaking my head, but I'm signing yes. Okay. I admit it. I did it. Yes. It was me. Proud of it. I did it. Yes. All right. What's the sign for? This is the sign for yes, but there's a bazillion ways to say it, and they all mean different things. All right. Second word, A of face, is affect. Now, the clinical definition of it, it's a psychological term for an observable expression of emotion. A person's affect is the expression of emotion or feelings displayed to others through facial expression, hand gestures, voice tone, and other emotional signs such as laughter or tears. So in plain English, for us people down here, okay, below the clouds, match the mood of the speaker for whom you are interpreting. Okay, Brother Baldwin, I'm working myself up for Thursday night, okay? I'm supposed to match his manner. Now, when you're a female, there's a little bit of a limitation to that, okay? And when you're up on the platform. Like last night, I was hitting the baseball, and I was on a surfboard, okay? Back when we were in Oklahoma, our pastor was an ex-Green Beret, so I learned all the signs for tank and M16s and bullets and all that good stuff. So I've been down on the field, hiking the football, all those things. Whatever the mood of that speaker is, you are supposed to be matching that mood. When they're sad, you're sad. When they're happy, you're happy. All of these things are supposed to be taking place all at the same time. All right? Letter C, characterization. Take on the personality traits of the person in your story or the person you are interpreting for. All right? Don't just play the character, but become the character. And I remember to this day clearly when that light bulb moment happened to me, because I used to mouth every single word that I signed, and I signed in English order. And we're not even getting into the whole ASL order thing today for this session. And I was taking classes. I was trying to learn this ASL. It was not natural for me. It was a struggle because I learned it all the wrong way, and here and there, and not any kind of official way. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try to use this ASL. Parables are fantastic to use your ASL in. I love the parables. They're great. But the pastor was talking about a story about him and his brother playing cowboys and Indians when they were growing up. Okay, one of them would be on a horse, the other one's chasing after him with arrows, and this whole story. Okay, I could sign this thing. My brother was on a horse, and I was chasing him with the arrows, and I could do it English. I could do that. And there was a particular deaf lady there named Laverne who was sitting there, and half the time she'd be asleep. And so if I did my story that way, she'd still be asleep. I decided, okay, I'm going to be on that horse. I'm going to be shooting the arrows. So, I got on that horse, and and I'm like, got the reins going, and I'm looking back behind me, the brothers, shooting the arrows. And I'm doing those close-up shots on the horse, and I'm doing the far-away shots and back and forth. And Laverne just perked up right in the middle of church, and she looked at me and she signed, "I like that horse." And that's when it hit me. They don't want words. They want you to be what it is, to be able to see it visually. All right? So another instance someone asked about the other day, there was I think maybe Angel, they were talking about, walking on the water. Okay, the story of Peter walking on the water. And I got the right guy, right? Peter walking on the water. Okay. Yes, okay. Sorry. A moment there. So it's not enough to tell about Peter getting out of the boat and walking on the water. You become Peter. Okay? Let that actor come out in you that has always been in there and you always knew it. Just bring it out. You are in that boat. Okay? And then you see Jesus. It's not enough to say that Peter got out of the boat. You get out of the boat. You actually literally step out of that boat and walk over to Jesus, confidently at first, but then all of a sudden, I'm on water. How would you feel? How do you think Peter would feel? And then he starts to sink. How would you feel if you were sinking in the water? Okay? All of those things, you become that character in your interpretation or even the storytelling. I mean, deaf are phenomenal storytellers, all right? And the E is eye contact. Show you are interested and respectful. Do not turn your gaze away when speaking to the deaf. It is culturally rude, especially in this day and age when everybody's walking around looking at their iPhones. It's very culturally rude to break eye contact with a deaf person when you're speaking with them. They want to know that you are engaged in this conversation. It's very culturally rude to do that. And when you're in speaking in sign language or interpreting, using eye contact allows you to know if your audience is engaged and is understanding what is being said. So if I'm looking at you, I can tell if you're getting what I'm saying. All right, so that's why the eye contact is so very important. Now, I'll read you a little bit of an email that we received. It was an email about a deaf young man named Simon in Africa. Simon got saved. He was growing for the Lord, breaking away from his wrong friends that he had in the deaf school, had not really a relationship with his hearing family, but he wanted to see his hearing brother saved. He brought his hearing brother to church. The people there were able to lead his hearing brother to the Lord. Okay, his name was Simon. Simon was the deaf young man. And this is the email that we got. Simon and Sammy and Caroline, 3 deaf souls. These 3 deaf make our first term worth everything. Three deaf Kenyans saved forever. Thank you, Lord. The deaf ministry is a slow ministry. It's not a harvest that comes in quickly or all at once. We've not been able to win hundreds of deaf in 3.5 years' time. Instead, the deaf ministry is a process of meeting them one by one, of building a friendship and teaching, helping, guiding them, and going over the gospel again and again. Why? The deaf in most places of the world are a brand new and basically untouched mission field. Biblical concepts are brand new to them. Imagine hearing the gospel for the first time. What would you do with it? It takes time for it to sink in. But when it does, it brings forth fruit in some of these precious lives. And Simon is a trophy of God's grace. What a blessing that God allowed us to be here in Kenya to win him to Christ. So you ask what happened to BJ with the monotone eyebrows. This letter is from BJ. And Jessica Cormier.
missionaries to the deaf in Kenya. Jessica said, BJ told me last night, I am stretched about as far as I can stretch right now. I'm maxed out with what I can do as one man. He literally has no more time in his schedule, and my heart aches for all the deaf still out there waiting. I answered him with pain in my heart. I guess all we can do is just keep reaching our own little corner of the world. But sadly, it is not enough for the millions of deaf still waiting to hear. So this is one of the faces of American Sign Language who went to Kenya and who are now working with the deaf. It's a picture of BJ surrounded by deaf Africans, Kenyans, who've never heard the gospel, and now they have. Last time I saw BJ, he came to our house, and I can't remember if it was when he was finished up his deputation. He said, Miss Crabtree, there's something I want to show you. He looked at me, and he went, and he moved his eyebrows up and down. So those are the kind of people that God can use. There's some people that are just fantastically talented and wonderful in the language, but have little to do with the deaf, because it's all about me and what I look like when I'm up there interpreting for the deaf. Honestly, I know most of you that know us would not believe this. My husband and I are relatively shy, quiet people. Okay, don't laugh too hard. No, you don't believe that. But when you do this, it becomes necessary to come out of your shell. It's not an easy thing to be up there on a platform and a whole bunch of people, and then you also remember there's a camera out there too, on a surfboard. Okay? Or when you're up there and somebody is rattling off all the names of God at 165,000 miles per hour right behind you just to see what you're going to do. Okay, I've been in that situation more than once and might be the same on Thursday night as well. Just being prepared for that. And what's interesting is how many people come up and say, oh yeah, you did such a wonderful job. I'm like, you have no idea how many times I said, et cetera, in my interpretation at the moment I was interpreting. Okay? There's only so fast your fingers will fly. So it's a language, it's a culture, it's a people. And sometimes secular as well as religious settings, people's egos get in the way of deaf souls being saved. And you have to remember, it's not about you. My husband always says, if you're in this as a ministry or a calling because you love the deaf, then you better hit the road. Well, he doesn't quite say it that way, but you do it because you love the Lord, because sometimes you just don't like the deaf. So you've always got to make sure that you've got your heart right. And remember to keep your relationship with the Lord right, and then everything else will be fine. So if you ever get a chance, BJ and Jessica Cormier, wonderful missionaries in Kenya. I mean, they're going back and forth between villages and deaf schools, and it's just them, and it's overwhelming. They need help. She writes the most phenomenal missionary letters. Just great. If you get a chance to kind of look them up, get some information on them, I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Last name is spelled Cormier.
You will never find a lady that writes such finest letters.
Yes.
I mean, I've read many, thousands of missionary letters. Never find an old lady who writes what she does. And she was born and raised, raised in Michigan.
Yeah, she grew up in the mission field, his wife in Papua New Guinea. And BJ is from Louisiana. But I guess there's maybe a comparison there. I don't know. We always teased him about that. So, and if my husband, he wouldn't mind, go ahead and come up to have a word of prayer to finish out the session. And appreciated y'all's help. I know it was kind of quick, but there's a few resources there available for you to reach. And then again, we've got a couple of missionaries to the deaf here in the session if you want to try to get some information from them as well.